Often when we're teaching, we talk about taking a deep breath, but it's not always necessarily the best instruction because people tend to then just repeat what they're used to doing, what they're familiar with. And often when we say take a deep breath, people will just kind of breathe up into the chest and maybe use some of these secondary muscles that pull up through the chest and into the neck, which is not so relaxing. So what we could suggest is that we breathe low in the body, around the diaphragm. So I quite often just explain the diaphragm attaches to the lower ribs. You've probably heard me say it lots of times. And also to think about not just the front of the lungs, but also the back of the lungs. We actually have lots of lung tissue in the back body. Of course, in the front body, you've got the heart and you've got the liver coming across and the stomach, the pancreas. So essentially, actually in the back, there's more lung tissue available for the breath. So let's explore ways to move with that awareness, as well as thinking about how we could cue that for students. So one of the easiest places perhaps is with the cat-cow pattern, because that's quite familiar, often. So usually we would probably inhale and draw forward and up with the chest, and then exhale and round the spine. But of course, what we could do is to just reverse that. So sometimes I let people just get into the rhythm in the normal way, bearing in mind that for beginners, even coordinating breath and movement can feel a bit difficult in the first place. And then I sometimes just suggest that people pause after they've rounded the spine. So if we breathe in and then breathe out and round the spine, and then stay here for your in-breath. And then move with the out-breath. And stay here for your in-breath. And then move with your out-breath. So then we can describe things like, as you're inhaling in this position, feel the broadening coming to the back body. Imagine you're breathing into the back of the lungs, etc. So you can actually give them more tips about feeling the widening or the broadening or the spreading of the shoulder blades, that kind of thing. Rather than cueing so much about the movement itself, where we might be saying, oh, pull the shoulder blades down or something, we can be cueing just much more about the breath and not worry so much about the shapes coming. You could, of course, in a more simple way, simply hold the pose and have them notice the breath in the back, the inhale and the exhale. So that's one quite useful place to work in that way. Another thing that we could do is to use the hands onto the lower lungs, so probably from a seated position, any kind of seat that works for your students. And then we've got a few options here. One is to place your own hands on the lungs, maybe like this. Looks a bit chickeny, but feels fine. Or you could crisscross the arms. I find this kind of feels a bit more relaxed usually. You can also do this in partner work, obviously, sitting one behind the other. I tend not to do that with beginners so much because I think it can be a bit weird for people. Then as I inhale, or as the students inhale, I invite them to fill their hands with the breath and feel the ribcage widen. And I don't really need to cue the exhale so much. You might just say you might feel that the ribcage narrows a little on the exhale. As you inhale, feel that the whole of the side ribs broadens and you can feel the breath in the hands. As you exhale, just let the jaw and the eyes and the tongue feel soft. Another one that you can do, and this works well in movement as well as stillness, if you have yoga belts, is to use the belt on the lower ribs, making it not too tight. A little bit of corsetry. So I'm going to kind of tuck it fairly low on the rib cage and not super tight, so that then as I inhale, I can feel that I'm breathing low because it fills up, and as I exhale, you can just cue softening on the out breath or whatever, and on the in breath, cue to go broad with the breath. You can see that in the back, it's really quite low because, of course, the ribs are kind of coming around and down. So it's literally just above the waist. And you can use that in movement as well. Something like triangle pose can be a nice place to explore that. I'll show that another time. So then, other places that it's really useful to feel. If you grab a blanket and a bolster, those are a good idea so that people can feel quite supported if you have those kind of props. Sometimes people prefer to be more upright, maybe even propping this up onto some bricks. And then this could also be something like this, so the head could go to the side. And then again, you're just letting people soften and relax and then breathing into the back body. And whenever we're in any forward fold, we tend to be able to feel the breath more into the back of the body, so that can work quite well. So maybe just enjoying a minute or two there with that breath being felt in the back of the body. Now, there's some students who it doesn't work for with the knees or the hip flexors to be lying forward in child pose. So simply being on the back can work well for that as well. And for that position, anything with the knees, whether they're coming in or whether they're on the floor. In this position, I tend to invite people to feel that the whole back body broadens and softens down, or talk about the tissues of the body, meaning like the muscles and the skin and the fatty tissues, like all of the tissues, but I tend to just say like the tissues of the body broadening and softening. So using language where there's that real sense of connection down to the ground, down to the earth. So the other thing from child that we can go into is to be bringing the arms forward a little. And sometimes that gives a bit more freedom of movement around the shoulders. So if you're still in your child, or if you want to come back into child and then bring the arms forward as much as feels comfortable, prop anything that wants propping. And now as you breathe into the back, you might feel the breath not just around the lower lungs, but you might also feel it up around the shoulders, because instead of the arms being more passive back, we've given a little bit more work around the shoulders by bringing the arms forward. Simply inviting the breath to touch into any area where you notice sensation, where you're feeling awareness of the body. And we can also try the arms in different positions, so like palms facing in or palms facing up. So if it's someone who tends to hold tension around the shoulders or in the upper back, this can also help that to release sometimes by just shifting the awareness and the nervous system. Also perhaps by bringing a little bit more freedom of movement around those tissues of the shoulders that are being breathed into effectively. Using that phrase in a very general way. So those are some of the ways in which we can have that idea of the back body and the back of the lungs. And then, of course, even within more dynamic poses, we could add that idea in. So if we came into, let's say, a down dog pose, we could add a little bit of movement there, like a cat-cow kind of movement. I could exhale round the spine, or even inhale, keep the spine more flexed. And then exhale to extend the spine a little bit more. You can offer that people stay in their tabletop for that if they prefer. We can also bring more awareness into the back body in any of the other poses. So whether it was a Parsvottanasana, maybe the hands are high or on the floor, or a low lunge, by swooping down And just kind of getting the back to move a little bit more, getting the spine to move a bit more. If the hamstrings are kind of holding on, so the back's feeling restricted, we can keep a bit more height to the hands. So we could round the spine there and breathe in. So if your students are used to a much more dynamic class, but you feel that you want to introduce these ideas, there's no reason why you can't introduce them in more dynamic poses or movements. Low lunge. Inhaling, lift the chest. Stay there for the exhale. Round the spine. And inhale into the back. And exhale, etc. So you get that idea. You can really just have a play with it in your own time, moving with the breath, and then perhaps switching the breath, being less attached to the idea that the inhalation always has to be on the spinal extension and the exhalation always has to be with the spinal flexion, so that when we're rounding the spine in any position, let's say we go from Utkatasana, I could then inhale here and exhale. Bring the chest forward. Exhale around the spine and inhale here. And release. Good. I'm going to come down and just teach a little bit of the breath awareness from lying on the back to close. And if you think about it, if you use a prop in the back body, say we were going to do like Supta Baddha Konasana or something, and we're pushing the chest forward, again, that's going to be emphasizing the breath in the front of the lungs. So instead of that, I'm just going to put this under the legs, and that's going to help posteriorly tilt the pelvis and feel the back into the ground a little bit more. Something like this, or legs straight, whatever you prefer. So see if you can get comfortable. If you need some more length for your neck, let that happen. And then just really invite your body to find contact with the surface of the earth. Almost as if you, your body, and the earth are breathing together. You may like to imagine that as you inhale, the earth is exhaling, you're inhaling that breath into you. And as you exhale, your body weight sinks down into the ground a little bit more. As you inhale, you feel that your body is received by the earth and the breath lifts into your lungs from the back. And as you exhale, your body broadens and softens down towards the ground. Notice if there's any sense of restriction or holding through the body, or often it's actually in the mind. Perhaps just have a look at that idea, perhaps thinking you need to be doing something else or something more important. How would it feel to shift to just be more fully present in this moment? Noticing that sense of support that comes from the earth when you allow your body to inhale from below and exhale down into the ground. Give yourself time to be present and to soften, so that you can enjoy a day feeling really nurtured and nourished. Let yourself rest for longer, or if you feel ready, maybe hugging the knees in, maybe rocking side to side so you feel the back on the ground. And then stay with any qualities of ease as you come to your side and lift from there. Good. So I hope that's given you some ideas around teaching a breath which can feel more nurturing, more relaxing, and can just really help to shift from whatever pattern the nervous system is in. Thank you for practicing.